and welcome to Cookie Pocket, an attempt at a podcast. Happy Friday to all of our wonderful listeners out there. This is, I believe, episode 5 for us.
Yeah.
So, rolling right along. We're having fun, and we hope you are too. Today we're discussing Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, directed by George Lucas himself.
Yep.
For better or for worse. And to some it's just Star Wars, and to some it's Episode 4, A New Hope. And we're going to discuss the discrepancies between the theatrical release and the special editions, and a few other things as always. But to maintain the pattern that we've set off on in our previous episodes, I'm going to ask my two co-hosts, Zach and Mitchell, to open with their general impressions of the film and their rating out of 5.
Okay. Mitchell, I'm going to assume you don't want to go first this time instead of asking.
No, I'll go first.
You'll go Okay, go first. There you go.
Well, I've never been first before. This is
No.
This is Star Wars Episode 4, everybody. This is A New Hope. I hope you read the title crawl, unless you were a boomer in 1977. But this is basically the pinnacle of all space operas, and this is literally the hero's journey exemplified in sci-fi format. It's hard to put into words how important the movie actually is, not only just in the entertainment industry, but also just as a human triumph of the 20th century. But just critiquing it as a regular movie, especially to today's standards, it would seem kind of outdated in a lot of ways, and that's obviously to be expected, considering how old the actual movie is. But it kind of exists beyond its own simplicity in the way, like, if you read into scenes and you really think about how essential they are, not only to the prequels and the succeeding original trilogy movies, but also just I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought. But the point, it really, it's hard to describe, because the way that it takes archetypes and puts it into its own universe, and George Lucas being more of a world building director than an actual storytelling director, I guess you could say. This is more serves as a foundation than anything, and the special effects and the score and the casting choices were nothing short of perfect. But yeah, those are the main reason why I really give it a 4 out of 5, is just of not only how important it is, but also just the number of starting points and potential that it presented for future sci-fi movies and for the sequels.
I would say this is a movie that I really understand why it sort of caught on with the public and became the massive hit that it was. The special effects and world that this presented was really ahead of its time, and additionally that sort of science fiction world had not been seen sort of rendered on screen like that since probably like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and that was a very, very different kind of science fiction film. So I can definitely see with sort of excitement and the space action and the special effects why this movie caught on with audiences. But I do think, looking back on it, I do think there are quite a few things wrong with it, and I think it has sort of dated. It might be that I've just seen this movie so many times at this point, but this latest rewatch, I actually thought that it moved kind of slowly. I feel like although it is a pretty typical hero's journey narrative, and it sticks to that hero's journey pretty well, it takes us a long time to get off of Tatooine and actually get kind of the story going. And I feel like George Lucas's direction in a lot of places really lacks urgency, if that makes sense. There are sequences in this movie that feel like they're meant to be quick and exciting, and all the cuts and all the shots are in the right place, but it just feels like that on-set urgency isn't quite there. So I think looking back on it, this movie is maybe a little slower and clunkier than a lot of people remember it, which is why I give it a 3 out of 5 myself.
Yeah, that's fair. To your credit, Zach, this is, my goodness, I've probably seen this movie over 100 times
Wow.
in my life. I wouldn't be surprised, and I've watched it just within the past couple months at least 5 times. So I was also I also felt a little bit of the drag that you're describing, and I think it might be due to a little overexposure. For this rewatch, I first rewatched the special edition on Disney Plus on streaming 4K in quotes, because I don't believe you can really stream 4K, but that's what it was supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
And then I watched the theatrical release on VHS, and I think it's important to point that out because most of my preferential treatment towards the special edition is largely because of the incomparable advancement in the graphics and just the sound quality in general. So, but even that being said, the theatrical version is better, I would say. You guys hit the main points. The casting is incredible. The score is perfect. And I think what I'll say about the whole hero's journey thing is that the fact that plot is so simplistic and follows that formula letter by letter, to me, is sort of a proof of concept of how strong George Lucas's galaxy is conceived, and just how strong that vision is in general, that these characters and the situations they're put in can be very archetypal and formulaic, but you still feel extremely attached to all of them. And I mean, I'm obviously a huge Star Wars fan, but not just me, but like thousands of people or across the world have felt the same way about the characters. So I think that is a compliment to the world that George was building, more so than it is a compliment to the story itself that is being told, at least in this installment. So
yeah, I think this one kind of stands out in that of the original trilogy, at least, this is the one that you can. I don't think this series really starts to take itself seriously as like a saga and a serious world until Empire, because the original idea for Star Wars was for it to be kind of a sort of throwback B-movie tribute to Flash Gordon. And I think you can definitely tell in this film. I feel like the way this is structured and the tone is much more in line with those old serials than something like Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, where it's taking itself a lot more seriously.
yeah,
And I think that the audience's and critics' reaction to A New Hope was taken a very, not only very seriously, but it was, I think Empire really knows what it is. Like as a sequel, it knows that it's a sequel, and it knows what it has to achieve, what it has to take from A New Hope and make better, and add on to, and it has many opportunities to take it into random directions outside of the hero's journey formula. So I think that I mean, I would say that helps Empire, but I think it also helps A New Hope. Just the versatility of the characters and the universe that was left in A New Hope is probably like the most versatile, world building type of universe that I think has ever been created in cinema. And whether George Lucas meant that or not, or he, had that full intention, which it appears he didn't at all earlier on. Whether he had that intention or not, the effect that it had on fans at the time and what it can have on children now, I think even children now, like watching it, and young adult critics like ourselves can really take. We can really take a lot of these. We can take A New Hope into its own category, not thinking about the other movies, and think of it as its own special child of George Lucas.
Yes.
So
yeah,
George Jr.
yeah,
I'd agree. I realized I neglected to mention my rating out of 5.
Yes.
In our pilot episode where we ranked the Star Wars films, I gave this film a 5 out of 5, and I think I still think that rating is justified, mind you, because the wide-spanning influence of this film is immeasurable. But upon the rewatch, I found myself agreeing with Zach a lot more than I wish I did.
Oh.
And for that reason, I'm bringing it down to 4.5, like I did with Rogue One. But I'm just the sheer influence and strength of the leads and John Williams. For me, all that stuff weighs so much heavier than the poorly aging effects in certain spots and the incomplete bits. I wanted to move on. I wanted to spend some time on Hero's Journey, but I feel we've handled that pretty well in this intro bit. So maybe we can talk next about John Williams and the score.
Okay.
And about all the iconic pieces introduced in this film. I think the two biggest are probably just the main title that's played during the crawl and at the end of the film, and oddly enough, the Cantina Band song,
Yes.
which now is kind of a meme, but is a really impressive work in that it's really catchy and kind of corny, but it's not like cheaply written or cheaply made, and it doesn't feel out of place, at least not to me, in the Cantina, which to me is like a really phenomenal work to make like a pop song that isn't easy and cheap, that feels in universe and is not clunky. But
It also
you guys
feels,
have anything to say?
I was just going to say that the Cantina Band song, I think, also feels just alien and weird enough that you believe it would be played on this, like, cantina light years away, but it's also familiar enough that you can kind of, like, bop along to it as you listen. One thing I did find myself sort of recognizing in this recent rewatch is that I think that Williams' score for this movie, at least to me, it feels a little too reliant on those kind of motifs that we all know, the sort of binary sun motif and the iconic opening motif that we hear all the time associated with Star Wars. I feel like those, or little hints of those, almost show up in places where they feel kind of inappropriate, or they feel like they shouldn't necessarily be there. Like I feel like the sort of opening motif that everybody recognizes as the Star Wars opening music, a suggestion of that shows up when Luke is racing to get home after after they find the burning dead Jawas. And during that, I thought, why is this here? This feels really weird.
Really?
And there were other places where I think the binary sun motif showed up, and I thought, that feels like it shouldn't be there. I do feel like there were places where Williams' score to this movie, though it's still good, it feels like maybe it's trying a little too hard to put in those catchy riffs instead of maybe doing something a little more subtle and wallpapery. But that's just my opinion on it. I know a lot of people really love his score to this film.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that opinion, and especially looking at later sci-fi movies and horror is even more. That how important it is to have the score very subtle and underlying and supporting rather than kind of taking the scene and running with it. But I do feel that having a space opera vibe, feeling as though you're in like I will say in the Family Guy. A rendition of A New Hope.
Blue Harvest, yeah.
Chris is looking at the binary suns and he's like, John Williams, everybody, and he like points to him, and it's like the entire orchestra is there, and it still fits the vibe. Like I don't know why, but I still feel, I see what you mean though. It like just Luke staring into the suns and then having that being like blown in your eardrums is anticlimactic. It definitely is, but it also it's anticlimactic, but as very subjective that this might sound, it's iconic. Okay, it's iconic.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is iconic.
I don't think you can argue that. Yeah, it definitely is iconic.
And it's iconic for a reason, because it's the way that it is anticlimactic and how the score takes over the scene kind of, as it's blowing in your eardrums, you're kind of wondering, you start to wonder what this universe is. You start to ask yourself questions, and it's kind of a breathing moment almost.
Yeah.
So it makes you think about the scene less and think about more as yourself as an audience member trying to figure out what's going on. As loud and orchestral it is.
Yeah. And For me at least, that binary sunset moment is probably my favorite moment in any movie ever. Full stop. Wow. Yeah, I get chills every single time I watch it without fault, and I've seen this movie so many times. I have no idea how many, but I don't know. I think that music, like swelling in a scene that feels so almost like mundane and unnecessary, to me is just one, a credit to the power of music and what it can make people feel just generally, and two, like Mitchell said and described really well, it makes you think, and it's a breathing moment. And to me, some of the best moments in Star Wars aren't necessarily the backflipping lightsaber duels or the thrilling dogfights. They're the quiet moments with these characters where they're like contemplating their purpose in the galaxy. And to me, that'll always hit harder than an exciting action sequence. And in our last pod, we talked about Rogue One, and I think at some point I said Rogue One is not as character driven as this movie is, but I still had us talk about our quote unquote favorite characters from that film. And I wanted to do basically the same exercise with this one, because for the opposite reason, I think the characters are really what make this film. And I know even Zach likes one or two of the characters in this one.
Yeah.
Do you want to start off, Zach?
Sure. Well, I would say that probably my favorite Star Wars character, or at least my favorite in the original trilogy, is Han Solo. But this most recent rewatch, I found Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin sort of made the movie for me. I'm kind of going off topic a little bit here, but I feel like Cushing might have been one of the only actors on set who kind of understood what kind of movie this would end up being. A lot of the other actors kind of feel like they did what George asked them to do, but they weren't necessarily sure about how it would turn out. Alec Guinness definitely gives off a feeling as if he thinks he's above this material. But Peter Cushing, I think, he knows what kind of character he's playing, and he plays it spot on. He doesn't go too over the top. He doesn't feel like he's slumming it. I feel like Tarkin is basically the real villain of this movie. In hindsight, we all look back on Darth Vader as kind of the big bad of the original trilogy. But in this movie, I feel like Darth Vader is kind of, the king's champion. He's the heavy, he's the dragon, he's the character the hero has to take out before they can take out the real villain, which is Tarkin. And I think that Cushing plays that villain just spot on.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think in many respects, Tarkin is the lead villain, not Vader. And yeah, that was definitely apparent to me upon rewatch too. He just has such a great grasp of what the material is striving towards, which the other actors, I pity them because, and I was watching a documentary about the making of A New Hope, and Harrison Ford describes how George directs them sometimes. And he's talking about what's in the script, and he's trying to get them to say it a certain way. And Harrison says, George is like, I wrote it down. It's right there. Just do it like this.
Yeah.
And Harrison's like, but sometimes you can't just do it like this, George. You've got to so I do pity them from a directing standpoint. And I guess Cushing is just that good to rise above it. But Mitchell, your turn to share.
I think Christian, I'm assuming Zach would probably know this as well. Han Solo has always been my favorite character from the original trilogy entirely. And primarily in A New Hope, he is also my favorite character because what little screen time he actually has compared to Luke, I would say, and how seemingly unimportant he might be earlier on. He kind of has his own coming to terms with who he is in the galaxy, and how much that actually comes across in A New Hope compared to Solo is very interesting. I feel like I learn more from Han in A New Hope than I do in Solo, and that's just beyond criticizing Solo. But in A New Hope, he kind of has his own character arc, and it does make it interesting, his attempts with Leia. We're just going to say Leia and Luke are definitely going to get together by the end of this trilogy, everybody was saying.
Whoa.
But yes, Han Solo making attempts as a smuggler and being ultimately very relatable person.
Mm-hmm.
And not just a relatable person, like he's a non-politically correct, white guy that's just being annoying and hates everything that he doesn't understand. But he's beyond that. He kind of came into his life. He was born, relatively poor and didn't, you don't even need to know his backstory to already kind of know what it is, because there's a lot of people in today's world that can definitely relate to his character. And even though he is a smuggler and a criminal, he's still trying to make do with what he has, trying to fight the IRS, I guess, in the galaxy. But yeah, not only is he's just relatable, and I mean, just Harrison. I'm not even mentioning Harrison Ford as an actor, but since we're talking about the characters, Han Solo, how important he becomes towards the end. Is one of the most monumental moments in all of Star Wars, and obviously we don't really know how he's going to feel, and just the general what we know and what we can interpret and what we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of complexities that can be interpreted by what little Han Solo says and the way he acts standoffish and his obvious archetype, his personality. But just how interesting he is to me personally. In all those regards, makes him my favorite character.
Yeah. I would say the only scene in this film that still kind of, after so many rewatches, the only scene that routinely still gets to me and makes me kind of go, oh yeah, is the very end when, as you mentioned, Han flies back in with the Falcon and helps Luke take out the Death Star. That's like the only scene in the movie that that hasn't been like watched to death for me, and really kind of still packs that effective punch. So I think that definitely is a testament to kind of his arc and the effectiveness of that character.
Yeah, I'd agree. I used to be kind of a ho-hum on Han Solo for some reason.
What?
I think maybe that's just because I was always more drawn to the fantasy elements of it, and I was all about the Jedi and the Sith and the Force. Like, to me, that was more interesting than smugglers and bounty hunters. But there's no denying Harrison Ford is unbelievably charismatic, and there are these little bits where you can tell he's not like totally a trained actor at this point, when he's talking to Leia and he's like pointing at her and pointing at her, and I expect to get paid and I'm pointing at you, and there's like a couple of little moments. Yeah, it's just a Zach trick.
Right.
But I mean, it doesn't even matter because it's Harrison Ford and it's Han Solo, and you're just totally drawn in the entire time.
Yeah.
And,
Harrison Ford is Han Solo.
He is. He absolutely is.
He's got that charm.
Yeah, not to get too off topic, but Mitchell mentioned Solo, and I think that's like, it's just an impossible task to do a Han Solo film without Harrison Ford, because you're just never going to get what you got with him. It's just not possible. Anyway, my favorite character in this film is probably Princess Leia. Yeah, and in the context of like the entire saga, Anakin / Vader is my favorite, but for A New Hope, I was really like, Leia is just like unbelievably competent, and it's a breath of fresh air, I'm sure, for 1977 to see this prominent female character that is basically better at rescuing herself than Luke and Han are at rescuing her, and she doesn't take any of Han's crap, and she's like, from now on you do as I tell you. And I don't know, it's this character like predating Ripley, and now we've got characters like Rey and blockbusters starring Wonder Woman and Black Widow and whatever, and it's a really phenomenal landmark for cinema for Carrie Fisher as Leia, and for me, her character only gets more interesting as the saga progresses, but definitely her introduction here stands out to me a lot.
And nobody tries to simp for her either.
Yeah.
Well, I think Luke does a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point, which is even weirder, but
yeah. On the Millennium Falcon,
he doesn't try too hard. He's got business to take care of.
That's true, but there's the one bit where Han's like, I expect to be well paid, and then Leia's like, your friend is quite a mercenary. I wonder if money's all that he cares about. Or she says something like that, and she walks away, and Luke's like, I care.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so there's a little. That's basically just like
That's 77.
yeah,
Sydney.
golden retriever Mark Hamill energy shining through.
Yeah.
Speaking of Luke Skywalker, I wanted to spend a brief amount of time answering this question. I'm just going to ask the question and then ask both of you to answer it.
Okay.
Is Luke Skywalker a Mary Sue?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna need an official definition of Mary Sue. Are we saying he's overpowered? Is that kind of the...
Okay, yeah. My understanding of what Mary Sue means, generally speaking, is a character that is good at literally everything without having any sort of backstory or qualification for being so good at what it is that they do.
I would say not really. Especially if we look at it outside the confines of this film. Like if we look at the original trilogy in its entirety, him going off to Dagobah and having to train extensively, I would say probably makes him not a Mary Sue. In this film, I guess you could maybe make that argument because even though he is kind of out of his depth, he finds his way out of situations, regardless of whether or not he uses the Force. The sort of zip line across the chasm, I guess, would come to mind as a situation where anybody else would probably just fall and die. But we do kind of see him putting in the work and doing some training with the blast shield and the remote when he's practicing with the lightsaber. So I'd be comfortable not calling him a Mary Sue.
Yeah.
If we're talking, I would definitely agree with Zach. If we're talking about in the context of A New Hope, I don't really see how he could be a Mary Sue. I mean, if we're talking about the actual trilogy, I mean, I guess there's some argument, but I think the problem, like we were mentioning before with the hero's journey, is designed it's fundamentally designed to prevent things like accusations, horrible accusations of Mary Sue-ness. For I think it protects Luke and it also to an extent protects Rey, but we're not talking about the sequel trilogy.
No.
So, no, I do not think that Luke is a Mary Sue. I think that everything that he accomplishes in A New Hope is justified within the bounds of the hero's journey, and also how the events happening in later films. But as I've said, solely talking about A New Hope, I do not think that there is very much evidence to say that he is unflawed. He literally comes from being flawed in the beginning. On Tatooine. Yeah. He's asking for power converters like a child, and that's unacceptable. But the point is of the New Hope is to set the foundation, and we're setting the foundation of the Force as a concept, and the Force is not something that is always used to explain things that George Lucas and those involved could use as a crutch, and you could argue back and forth, but I think A New Hope is what it's so special about it is that it has that free range of creativity, and all that Luke has to do, at least at this point, is to accept that the Force is a thing and to take advantage of the space wizard that told him about it. So, and The New Hope at the very end, what he accomplishes is because he had faith in the Force, and figured out how to use it. And I don't think that's something that has to necessarily come out of training. I don't think he had to be trained to do that. I mean, they do mention the Beggar's Canyon,
right?
The Womp Rats,
right, and the Womp Rats. And I think that definitely helps. And I think we know just enough about Luke for him to be a character that should be developed later on. We know enough about Luke to take him as he is in Empire Strikes Back. So as long as that's possible, I don't see how calling him a Mary Sue or trying to insinuate that really helps his character or people's general opinion of Star Wars. Yeah. So
Thank you for putting up with that. I just wanted to kind of drop that bomb on you guys and see where it went. I think that I short answer, no. I don't really think anyone in Star Wars is a Mary Sue, so to speak. But I think like this whole movie basically depends on suspension of disbelief, and you can argue that that him like bullseyeing the Death Star while using the Force instead of his targeting computer is like not realistic or whatever, but neither is the entire rest of the movie. So,
neither is the Force.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think he's a Mary Sue. I just wanted to throw that out there. Next up, we spend a lot of time in our general thoughts mentioning effects and special effects and practical effects and whatever, but we don't, or at least to this point, haven't talked a lot about sound, at least outside of the score of a film. And I think that George Lucas famously said that half of your experience in cinema is how the thing sounds.
Yeah.
And I mean, this movie has probably got half a dozen of iconic sounds that pretty much anyone recognizes. So, Zach, I want to hand it off to you and hear what you have to say about the sounds.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely say the sound is a big part of this film. One of the things you recognize once you start kind of making short films is, in a lot of ways, sound is almost more important than your image. People are kind of willing to sit through something that has a not great image but good sound instead of something that has a good image and bad sound. Bad sound is a lot worse than a bad image a lot of the time. And I feel like this movie definitely does have those impactful sound effects that really help to kind of build the world. I think a great example would be when they're in the cantina. A lot of it is kind of simple Foley, but you've got the sound of these creatures kind of rustling around in the background, and little hoots and grunts that sound just a couple degrees off of what would happen in a normal bar, and it totally sort of just makes the auditory experience of this bar, and you're sucked right into it. Whereas if that had been silent or hadn't had those kind of unusual sounds in there, the scene might not have worked all that well. You might not have necessarily recognized why it didn't work all that well, but it would have been different and it might have not worked as well. So I think the sound definitely is a big part of why this movie works. And the sound isn't necessarily all down to, oh, well, the sounds that TIE fighters make and the sounds of the lasers. I mean, that is good as well. But one of the big kind of achievements of this movie, I'd say, is how it does perfectly ordinary Foley and background noises, and it just makes them feel normal and fit in, despite kind of the unusual things that are packed in there as well.
Yeah, well said. I didn't even think of that. You know, truth be told, I was thinking about how did this man come up with the sound of a lightsaber, the sound of Darth Vader breathing, the sound of a TIE fighter, the sound of Chewbacca roaring, all in the same movie.
Yeah.
Like to me, all four of those are like just unbelievably iconic. I don't know. Mitchell, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Every character and every object that is introduced in this that defines the universe has its own iconic sound that I think most individuals that have ever seen any movies would know exactly where they come from, except the Wilhelm scream probably.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, just beyond the score, I don't even think there's any score when Obi-Wan and Luke are talking, and you know that plot starts to develop there. But you know, Obi-Wan's like, oh, I got this cool saber stick, and then everybody in the audience is like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like that is a very, like, you know, it looks kind of like a sword, but it's like a space looking sword thing.
Yeah.
And then you don't really know what it is until you hear.
Oh, my giddy aunt.
I was not ready for that.
And then
one.
you're like, you're just freaking out, because then that just completes it for you. Like, you know that thing is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even though it kind of looks like a white stick when you're looking at it later on, not watching the special edition, then, but I mean, like exactly what Zach said. I mean, Darth Vader breathing, Luke whiny voice running around, Obi-Wan. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's how iconic everything is, and it's the most overused word probably for Star Wars anything. But it's the most simplistic way to get the appeal of the audience is to make your own sounds for this universe and to develop it from the ground up as much as possible. And the sounds of the blasters, I believe they like hit like a metal pipe or a stick of some sort against these long I think like those cable wires that you see, and that's exactly what the E11, the Stormtrooper blasters, sound like. Wow. So just, I mean, it's so simple, like just simple practical effects like that. I mean, just adding sounds like that just adds to the universe. I think there's very little to say about it other than just, hearing it for the first time and living the rest of your life having to, associate those sounds with that.
Yeah.
With those objects and people and grunts and Darth Vader having asthma. So.
Yeah. Well said, both of you. I don't really have anything to add. I wanted to spend some time on discussing the differences between what George Lucas calls the special edition, because he thinks it's special, and the theatrical release. Oh dear, my dog is barking.
Oh no.
Anyway, Zach, I know you have a lot of misgivings about the special edition, and I know Mitchell, you said you watched. Which version did you watch for this, Mitchell? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I don't believe I've seen the original version in a really long time, but I've seen the special edition enough times, not nearly as many as Christian, but I've seen it like tens and tens of times now. And I know pretty much all of the differences, and I've watched a lot of videos on the differences as well. So.
All right.
Did you want my opinion on it?
Yeah, I was going to ask both of you on the special edition changes, what you thought of them, and in general, which ones stuck out, good or bad.
Well, 1997 was a wonderful year for CGI. I'll say that. A lot of the CGI is dated. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It is dated not because it is from 1997, but because it is from 1997 and it is added to a 1977 movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is full of practical effects and defined by its practical effects, like I had said. And the only things that I like from the special edition that I'm glad that they added are the quality of life improvements. And what I mean by that is, for example, the white sticks no longer look like white sticks. I believe Christian. I'm actually kind of taking that joke from Christian because I believe when we actually watched A New Hope a while back, he had mentioned that, and that always stuck with me. But things like that, just general shots like R2-D2 going down the canyon, and instead of screen wiping towards the middle, they do a pan from the top. The iconic pan from the top.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, okay, whatever. I mean, who really cares? And add CGI rocks in front of R2-D2. Who cares?
Yeah.
Make Obi-Wan sound a little less like a crying monkey. Okay, that's fine. But, like, I mean, it's okay. But, like, Mos Eisley, that one sequence especially bothers me because you can tell so easily, even probably, like, 5 years after, like, probably, like, in 2002, if you watch that, or the 2005 DVD release, you can, and even in the Blu-ray edition in 2011, you can really see, like, okay, they just shoved all that CGI stuff in there, just like, ooh, like George Lucas, like, oh yeah, this is gonna make this really really vibrant, add to the character of Mos Eisley, and I mean that's okay, but at some point you really have to take the credibility of the original theatrical version and what they intended at the time. It's a capture in the moment in time when they made the movie. And I can understand why. Everybody can understand why they would add the CGI, why they would have Jabba looking the way that he did. I would actually say that Jabba looks a lot better when they improve him from the 1997 version to the DVD and Blu-ray.
The second update looks way better.
He looks very good. Yeah. That is another thing. But like I said, quality of life improvements. But if you're just shoving a bunch of CGI animals and, I mean, just adding random scenes that were not there previously, really just for the heck of it, honestly, just to assume that it's going to make the movie a lot better, It really doesn't. It really hurts the quality. It just hurts the quality of the overall of the experience. I mean, there's really not much else to say. But like I said, the details, very subtle details that they've added, and just things that obviously look better, like clearly look better. It would always look better after 1977 to add on to make it look better. Then that's perfectly fine. But when you start adding new scenes and new CGI characters just to try out the old CGI to make the prequels more justified, I guess, then that's when we start to have some problems.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, to start off with, I don't necessarily have a problem with the idea of a special edition, but where the problem comes in for me is that the special edition with the updated special effects, to me, that's a special feature. That's the kind of thing you put on as an extra on a Blu-ray release. And the version that came out in 77, that is the movie. And the special effects are a special feature. The issue comes in when now the special edition with the new special effects is the only version you can get. I mean, I watched the original on the late 90s VHS edition, but the problem with that is VHS is a technology that slowly destroys itself the more you watch it. So eventually, my VHS of the original is gonna break. Eventually, all VHSs of the original are gonna break. And then where are we gonna see Star Wars the movie rather than Star Wars the special feature? Like Mitchell said, some of the effects in this work. I was actually kind of surprised by there are bits in this where things that are added in the special edition or covered up in the special edition aren't entirely original. Like, some of it is in the original movie. Like, in the Look Sir droid scene, there is a stormtrooper on a big lizard on a dune in the background.
A do-back.
Yes, I had always thought that George added both of those in the special edition, but there is one there. So it's not like all of the editions are just things shoved in there. Some of them are just things he kind of painted over because he thought it maybe didn't look great. And I don't really have a problem with that. But as long as the original is still available and I can watch that instead of whatever George Lucas thinks looked cool in 1997, which doesn't really look all that cool anymore.
Yeah, I largely agree with what you guys said.
I was going to say something before Christian said it, because I know he's thinking about
Say it.
I know
Say
exactly what he's thinking
Say it.
about. I know exactly. Everybody knows.
McClunky?
Everybody, shut up, Zach. Everybody knows what this scene is, and why they had to change it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have
Who
to
decided?
change it.
Why did George Lucas do this to me? Okay, why did he do this to me? Why did he have to have Greedo shoot first?
And you know what?
Okay.
What compounds my absolute befuddlement to this decision is moments before the whole Greedo Han thing happens, you've got our friends from Rogue One, Dr. Evazan and Ponta Baba, threatening Luke Skywalker. Dr. Evazan says, "You'll be dead."
Yeah.
And Ben Kenobi's like, "This one's not worth the effort." And then they scream and like throw him across the room. And Ben Kenobi's like, "All right, I'm gonna cut your arm off." And like somehow that's not morally questioned.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, because that's textbook self-defense. Meanwhile, when you're looking at Greedo and Han, Greedo's pointing a blaster at Han the entire time, saying, "I've been looking forward to this. Jabba's done with you. I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah.
There's like this verbiage over and over and over again. There's no reason Han isn't justified to shoot him first. It's just, not to mention Han is more morally gray than Ben Kenobi, but like, ugh.
And the effect looks terrible. It's one of the worst aged things from the special editions, I'd say.
Yeah.
And even if you look at the original theatrical release, you can't exactly tell who shot, because they don't actually show the blaster bolts.
No, they don't.
They just show a big explosion of smoke and sparks.
Yeah.
And that ambiguity, I mean, nobody's really thinking of the scene that much. Like, okay, Han's cool. He kills Greedo, and that's it. That's like pretty much all you should get from that scene.
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing. There's nothing super big you should insinuate from that, other than Han is obviously constantly getting in trouble with everybody. Yeah. And, he always has, problems following him everywhere he goes.
He's a dangerous man.
Right. That's it. That's all you got. Dangerous man. That's it. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it sounds like we're all in agreement with the Han Greedo thing. and in terms of the special edition in general, like Mitchell said, the quality of life. I like that phrase. I'm going to use that. The way they fix the white sticks and make them lightsabers again, and there's pretty much every shot of R2-D2 in space inside the X-wing. R2 is black and gray instead of blue and gray because of some
the optical
blue screening reason, I think.
The blue would have vanished because I think they used a blue screen instead of green. Yeah.
So they fixed that in the special, and that's good and well. And I think there was one other technical fix that I can't remember right now. But what really stands out to me upon rewatching both is the trench run and the Death Star sequence is like entirely like almost all of it is redone in the special edition with CGI, and it looks better, I guess. And I guess that CGI doesn't even look too garish compared to the Mos Eisley stuff that Mitchell rightly criticized. But I mean, I don't know. It's not even a 1977 film anymore. It's just, it's like Zach said, it's a special feature. So I don't know.
But that's totally, I think it's good to have, in that case, I think it's good to have both to look at.
Yeah.
And, I don't think any of them is clearly better or worse. I think it's just a different experience. But like Zach had said, just shove it in the special features somewhere.
Yeah.
And I will also say Zach is correct. McClunky, I agree with that decision. Disney Plus. Good on them. One of the best things Disney has done in the past few years.
That's what that scene was missing.
I can't.
Yep, it is. It honestly was. I can hear an echo of McClunky in the background every time I saw that scene before they added it in. So,
not to mention, okay, I shouldn't even be spending time discussing this. This is not worth real estate in my brain. But why is every word Greedo says in that scene subtitled except for McClunky?
Maybe it's a really awful swear word on his planet.
Yeah. They can't just put like the @ sign and the pound.
It must be. Oh my goodness. All right, boys. This has been a delightful discussion, and it's time for the rundown. The trench rundown.
Oh.
Yuck. All right. Oh, that was bad. So we've got a long list for you today, Zach, and I spent a lot of time on it, and I don't think we'll get through it all, but we're going to do our best with 60 seconds because that is the nature of the rundown.
Okay.
Mitchell, I'm thinking of leading off on this one. Is that okay?
I guess. I mean, if that's how you feel,
all right,
that's fine.
Perfect. I'm going to start the timer in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh my god, I lost the list. Crap, I just lost 5 seconds. The aim of a stormtrooper.
2 out of 5.
Peter Cushing is Tarkin.
4 out of 5.
CGI dewbacks.
2 out of 5.
Figuring down on the modal nodes.
2 out of 5.
Modal nodes.
John Williams score.
3 out of 5.
C-3PO/U.
3 out of 5.
The special effects despecialized.
4 out of 5.
The special effects specialized.
2 out of 5.
Blue milk.
2 out of 5.
Mouse droids.
2 out of 5.
George Lucas as the director.
2 out of 5.
Binary sunsets.
3 out of 5.
The saving power of good editing.
4 out of 5.
An inexplicably vulnerable planet killer.
2 out of 5.
Explicably vulnerable planet killer. See Rogue One.
3 out of 5.
Carrie Fisher's Leia.
3 out of 5.
Greedo shooting first.
2 out of 5.
Han shooting first.
4 out of 5.
Mentioning the Clone Wars to a 1977 audience.
2 out of 5.
Smoking hot Uncle Owen in
out of
it.
time.
2 out of 5.
Oh no!
Out of time. Oh man.
Out of time,
Curses.
Zach. Take it
Diggity
back.
darn.
Take it back.
Oh. Wow.
We got through more of them than I thought we
Yeah,
would.
me too. I cheated and I paused it for a few seconds because I blew it at the beginning when I was starting the timer.
You
But-
cheater.
Oh my
But
gosh.
it's okay. But I didn't start saying it until like 5 seconds in. So it's
Okay,
fine.
all right.
It all evens
that
out.
went well. I think that went well.
That's all right. Wow, that was great, guys. Thanks for putting up with my Star Wars binge here. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna hand it off to Zach to give a preview of our next episode.
Okie doke. So next episode is my choice for the film, and we're going to be talking about the movie The Death of Stalin from 2018, which is a historical comedy, I guess is what I'll call it. So if you saw that, or if you didn't see it and you have an interest, then tune in next episode to see us talk about, or to hear us talk about, the death of Stalin.
All right, great. Thanks again, guys. This has been Cookie Pocket, an attempt at a podcast. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It's been great fun, and we'll see you next time.
Au revoir.